Hi, my name is Cassidy, and I'd like to tell you about iPoetry, a project that I spent a lot of time developing. Before I tell you about iPoetry, let me tell you why I created it. There are so many young kids that don't like to write, whether they're gifted or not. We all know that kids need to write well to do well in school. It can be bad for kids to not like writing when they're younger, because it could affect them later. This problem speaks to me a lot because I used to be one of them. I used to not like writing. I always felt like I had to write instead of wanting to write of my own accord. I thought that I wasn't a good writer because I couldn't put my ideas onto paper, and my brain just froze up whenever I needed to write. I found myself putting the writing off until the last minute, and I ended up being stressed, and the writing didn't turn out good anyway. Because of that experience, I know exactly how they feel, and I want to help them. Before I get there, I want to tell you how I got over my dislike of writing. I became interested in writing a little over 4 years ago, when I found out that April was National Poetry Month. During that month, I learned about a new type of poem, and wrote one or more of that type of poem every day. I posted my poems on a wall in the shape of a poetry, with each poem as a leaf on the tree. I had so much fun writing poems, and I started to gain more confidence in writing. From this experience, I realized that getting started through poetry could be a great way to spark other kids' interest in writing. By the end of that April, I had so many poems that I eventually turned them into my first book, Roller Coaster, a kid's guide on how to write poetry, where I added instructions for other kids to write their own poems in the same ways that I learned them. I've since written 3 more books. Constellation Exploration is about the constellations and the Greek mythology behind those constellations. I also included riddle poems and how to write them, so I could continue the theme of poetry. The Artist's Fortune is my first fiction book, and the only book so far with no poetry. In retelling Shakespeare's tragedies, I tell the story of some of Shakespeare's tragedies in my own words, and I have some sonnets and quatrains in the book too. Now, back to how I'm solving the problem. I have created iPoetry, a nonprofit organization with a mission to inspire a passion for writing through poetry for kids in kindergarten to 5th grade. Through iPoetry, my plan is to continue teaching poetry workshops on topics related to books I have authored. I am also in the process of creating an iPoetry website where kids will be able to watch video tutorials about different types of poems and try to write the poems themselves. I will then select a collection of poems submitted by the kids and publish them every year to help them become published authors. 2 years ago, I started developing materials for my poetry workshops, and have now held 6 workshops to teach poetry to kids in my community. The first workshop is called The Wonderful World of Poetry, and it's to introduce kids to different types of poetry, such as couplets, tercets, haikus, etc. I teach the kids about 4 different types of poems, and we have some fun activities, and I let them attempt those poems by themselves. The name of my other poetry workshop is Poetic Mythological Constellation Mysteries. I teach the kids about different constellations, and I tell the stories of the Greek mythology behind them. I teach them how to write a riddle poem, and then they can make constellations themselves with marshmallows and some uncooked spaghetti. It was a big hit among the kids because of the marshmallows. I have been very lucky that the IAA Academy, Pasadena Public Libraries, and LA Gifted Homeschoolers supported my idea and hosted these workshops. This April, to celebrate National Poetry Month, I am planning to lead 4 more poetry workshops. Once again, in IEA Academy, Pasadena Public Library, LA Gifted Homeschoolers Group, and a new venue, LA County Public Library in Hawthorne, will host these poetry workshops. Besides the other 2 original topics, I am excited to add a new workshop topic to introduce the children to Shakespeare's tragedies, and to teach them about sonnets. The second part of iPoetry is the website I'm creating. I've spent a lot of time working on the website over the past few months. I've created a curriculum and will post video tutorials to teach the kids how to write different types of poems. On the main section of the website, I will plant a virtual tree where the kids can post their poems after they learn how to write them. The poems that the kids post become leaves, and they will collectively grow a poetry that will get bigger as more kids submit their works. This way the kids can see each other's poems and realize that writing poetry can be fun. They can also learn at their own pace, because it isn't a class with a strict schedule. Every year, I plan to select a collection of poems submitted by the kids and publish them, so they can become published authors too. The iPoetry website will go live in April, just in time for National Poetry Month. I never imagined that creating my small poetry 4 years ago could grow into such a big project. I can't wait to see what the project will look like in a few years.